Hello, everyone, and welcome to Watercolor Science News, your monthly roundup of what's new in watercolor, from paint releases, pigment changes and research, exhibitions, and the art market. This week, we're looking at brand updates from Daniel Smith, Schmincke, and more, plus new discussions around lightfastness testing, major watercolor sales at auction, and exhibitions you won't want to miss. Let's get into this. This year, Daniel Smith, one of the most widely discussed brands among watercolorists, is celebrating its 50th anniversary of bringing people their wildly popular paints. Last year, they officially introduced 6 new extra fine watercolor pigments from their 2025 lineup. So here's the breakdown. Jaune Brillant, number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is made of PY65, PW6, and number 2 is made of PO62 and PW6. Both of these are soft, semi-transparent yellow and peachy tones made with semi-opaque white pigments, and they excel in skies and even florals, I think. Coral Reef. This is made from PO73 and PW6 and is another warm pastel hue. I've used a similar paint by Holbein called Shell Pink, and so I think this probably blends beautifully with blues and greens, similarly to Shell Pink. Earthy Light Red, made from PR290, an unusual warm terracotta-leaning red with really nice granulation that is also available as ginger red in the Szmal Aquarius range. Manganese Violet, made from PV14. This is a strongly granulating violet, which apparently was a staple in Claude Monet's palette. I was actually really surprised to see that Daniel Smith didn't already have this pigment in their range. And Cobalt Green Deep, made from PG26. This is a granulating, moody cobalt green that is fabulous for landscapes. So as you can see, these additions aren't just new pretty colors, although they are certainly beautiful, but they also strategically fill gaps in the latest trend in watercolor of expanding soft neutrals and granulating colors rather than high chroma bright hues. It seems to me that Daniel Smith continues to respond to landscape and naturalistic type of painting trends. Daniel Smith also launched 8 Triad Tube Sets that again seem to be geared toward plein air and landscape painting. These 8 curated triads are designed around moods, seasons, and subjects. Each trio combines 3 harmonized pigments, from the bright spring to the dramatic stormbreaker and the iciness of winter. I haven't checked these out myself. Most of them use multi-pigment paints, and I don't really use these much. But if I had to pick a favorite, I'd pick Summer for the ease of mixing with a solid primary triad and for the excellent light fastness of all 3 paints. In other news, Schmincke added a single pigment Indian Red to their watercolor range. Indian Red used to be made from PR101 and PR206, but since PR206 is being discontinued across multiple brands, I suppose they got ahead of the game. I haven't had a chance to try this paint, but any Indian Red is okay in my book. Schmincke also is discontinuing their Cobalt Green Pale, PG19, and replacing this pigment with Cobalt Green PG50. PG50 is said to offer better long-term stability and reliability compared to PG19, which is quite expensive, quite low tinting, and pretty hard to re-wet. Of note, I think the swatch that Schmincke has on their website is incorrect. Both of these look like PG50 to me. PG19 looks a lot more similar to this usually. I do like this change, as Cobalt Green is a favorite pigment of mine, and although PG19 is lovely, it is low tinting, and the way it's formulated makes it really gummy and kind of unpleasant to use. Of note, they are making the same change in their gouache, oils, acrylics, and pastels as well. I did think it was interesting that they mentioned that price point for artists was a consideration, since Cobalt Green is still a Series 4 paint, even after the change. Schmincke also releases a random gray paint at the end of each year, and 2026 was no exception. This paint is created from excess pigments, which means that the shade varies slightly in each edition. Specifics about the pigments used in Random Gray 2026 are still not fully disclosed, but the color is part of a series aimed at sustainability, utilizing excess pigments so they don't go to waste. Again, we don't have any pigment information, but the new Random Gray 2026 is listed under number 988. I haven't seen it listed in Jackson's or Blick yet. If you know where it can be purchased, let us know in the comments. Artist's favorite brand, White Nights, known for its rich, highly pigmented professional watercolors made by Nevskaya Palitra, has expanded its palette with 12 fresh granulating shades that add texture and visual interest in paintings, along with 12 new palette staples like Pyrrol Red PR254, Isoindolin Yellow PY110, and Helio Blue PB16. I like these. Instead of pushing novelty colors for novelty's sake, White Nights editions seem to aim for reliable, light-fast palette staples that function as core colors in an artist's kit. That's especially important for watercolorists who want their work to last without fading, which is a growing concern for modern artists. Here on this channel, we did do a deep dive into these new standard paints in the recent video, and I'm bringing you a complete review of the Metamorphoses granulating range in a couple of weeks, so definitely subscribe to get notified. In other news, Szmal Aquarius watercolors' immense popularity continues with the release of their mini urban sketching set in mid-2025. This is the set's lineup. Of course, they debuted Burnt Sienna Brownish in this 8-pan set. I have an in-depth review of this adorable set on my channel. Definitely do check it out. Szmal Aquarius also usually do a month-themed watercolor paint at the end of the year. This year, December 2025 is PG50 and PBR11. It's an earthy green pigment that separates remarkably well into its green and brown components. It's not yet available in Jackson's US, so on this side of the ocean, we'll have to wait to get it. Da Vinci updated 2 paints, Denise's Green and Denise's Turquoise, to be more earth-friendly and to remove cobalt from the earth-friendly palette curated by Denise Soden from In Liquid Color. Denise's Green was actually removed because of concerns over the hazard to aquatic life for Indanthrone Blue PB60, which was news to me. Denise's Green looks very similar and quite beautiful. And as far as the Cobalt Turquoise change, I love Cobalt Turquoise PB36. And the new one uses PW6, and I don't usually use paints containing white pigments, so I will probably pass on this one. However, I really applaud their effort to bring awareness to being kind to our beloved planet. Da Vinci also released the Harvest set with 6 new autumnal paints. Harvest Moon, PG7, PY42, PO62, and PY97. Transparent Orange, made from PY83 and PR149. Natural Hematite, made from PR101. Twilight, PB29 and PV29. Olive Brown, PV19, PG7, and PY65. And finally, Black Iron Oxide, made from PBK11. I bought this set especially excited about Natural Hematite and Black Iron Oxide. Their initial batch was extremely gummy and unusable, with hardly any pigment in the binder. This company is well known for its excellent commitment to quality and customer service, and they immediately and automatically sent out a replacement tube with a thoughtful postcard apology to everyone who purchased it, which, amazing. The new batch, although not as highly pigmented as the ones by My Mary Blue and Daniel Smith or even Van Gogh, was quite usable and lovely. Lastly, Da Vinci introduced another new paint, Sage and Amber, a granulating and separating multi-pigment paint made of PB36, PG7, PO62, and PW6. I haven't purchased it as I'm not sure how it would fit into my personal paint practice, given that I like to mix my own paints and I really rarely paint with multi-pigment paints, but it does look extremely beautiful and would fit in well into landscape and urban sketching palettes. Golden Core Watercolor introduced one new paint in 2025 to their open stock range, Ultramarine Turquoise, made from PB29 and PG7. It also comes as a part of Ali Kavanaugh's portrait set, which I have and really love and recommend. Ultramarine Turquoise is greener and more dark valued than their Phthalo Turquoise, made from PG7 and PB15:3. I've found Ultramarine Turquoise to be both beautiful and quite a good mixing color. Holbein released 5 new Nightfall colors, expanding their watercolor line with dusky, moody hues. These paints lean into deep value ranges that I think would be very appealing for painters exploring nighttime landscape paintings. This set includes Nightfall Yellow, PY110, PBK11, Nightfall Red, PR264, PBK11, Nightfall Violet, PV19, PBK11, Nightfall Blue, PB15, PBK11, and Nightfall Green, PY154, PG7, and PBK11. If you're into these dusky, nightfall type of paints, I have a granulating dusk nightfall paint comparison coming up featuring multiple brands side by side so you can see how these new Holbein paints stack up to them in real mixes and washes. So definitely subscribe to get notified when that comparison drops. Graham recently expanded their watercolor line with 2 new additions, Indigo and Quinacridone Magenta. Indigo offers a deep classic blue ideal for shadows, and Quinacridone Magenta brings a vivid, high chroma pink violet that the brand's range really sorely needed. Both paints feature Graham's signature honey-based formulation and high pigment load that of course lends itself to excellent re-wetting. I've already done a deep dive video on both of these paints, analyzing their mixing behavior, how they function in a real working palette, so definitely check that out on my channel if you want to see how they perform on paper. And finally, in major brand paint news, Paul Rubens continues to be popular among watercolor artists for their professional and student-grade watercolor sets made with high-quality pigments at an affordable price. The latest for them is their Ocean Landscape set, which includes 24 half pans in a metal palette. These are the details for the paints found in the set. 10 of the 24 paints are blue or turquoise paints, so it certainly makes for a proper ocean palette. I have their 36 tube set along with their floral set that I absolutely love, and I realized that this set doesn't include any paints that I didn't already have, so I decided not to purchase it. However, if you haven't tried this brand, this is a really good introductory set. It includes a lot of the hues that they are loved for, but bypasses a lot of the earth hues that, let's just say that have been unpleasant to use for a lot of new watercolor artists. Now, on to updates on pigment science and research in the art community. Several artist analysts and testers have noted ongoing community interest in real-world light-fast behavior, not just manufacturer labels. A long-term sunlight exposure test across 220 plus paints is now available as a reference when comparing pigment durability. In a deep dive into pigment permanence, artist and educator Miwa Gardner spent 7 months exposing more than 250 watercolor swatches from more than 10 brands to direct sunlight to see which colors truly withstand light exposure and which fade surprisingly fast. and published it on their blog last summer. What makes this test stand out to me is its real world approach. Instead of relying on manufacturer ratings, this artist taped swatches to a sunny window and documented visible changes over time. And the results were really eye opening. And my key takeaways from their findings are that not all Lightfast claims tell the whole story. UV protective sprays didn't actually function the way that you might have been expecting them to. And, a reiteration that fugitive colors still do have a place in one's palette, depending on what one's use is. I really recommend you check this full blog post out. Watercolor fans will be excited to know that Jane Blundell shared her first hands-on look at Michael Harding's watercolor range, a collection with 135 colors, including 92 single pigment paints. Michael Harding paints are loved for their rich color intensity and lovely re-wetting properties. Their range of green paints is especially striking to me. I really love these paints and really appreciate Jane Blundell's commitment to cataloging this range of paints along with many others for many years. On Watercolor Misfit's blog, they break down their favorite limited watercolor palette, a curated set of core colors that mix beautifully and keep color decisions very simple and intuitive. But what I really liked is that they paired these professional colors with affordable student-grade alternatives, including Winsor & Newton Cotman and Guretake Gansei Tambi. So beginners and budget-minded painters can still build a functional palette without sacrificing their wallet or sacrificing fun and good mixability. I really appreciate that this roundup makes finding the right paints feel exciting rather than overwhelming. Today's eye candy feature from Lines and Colors blog highlights a dry brush watercolor study by Andrew Wyeth, the famous watercolor artists. These loose, textured works, titled Noah's Ark Study and drawn from the Wyeth Foundation's collection, showcases the artist's remarkable control of watercolor textural possibilities, even in sketchy pieces. It's part of an ongoing series of exhibitions at the Brandywine River Museum that brings rarely seen works into public view. And finally, on blogs, Jackson's art blog highlights the salt texture technique, sprinkling salt onto damp watercolor to create spontaneous marks as the salt pulls moisture and pigment across the paper. Their experiments showcase how this is a watercolor technique popularized by modern experimental watercolor artists and wasn't actually used by old masters at all. You can see both sea salt versus table salt and transparent versus granulating pigments all influence what the resulting texture will be. It's a very fun way to enliven washes with feathery patterns and create unexpected highlights. Moving on to Painting Sold, a stunning watercolor by David Hockney, Courtyard, Palace of Carlos V. Alhambra, Granada, second version, just sold for $1.39 million, making waves in the art world and reminding painters everywhere of watercolor's expressive power and market impact on top of that. This panoramic piece, painted during Hockney's travels in Spain, showcases his masterful control of perspective and space and highlights how watercolor continues to command serious attention and value among collectors. A rare 1927 watercolor on paper by Edward Hopper, titled Spurwink Church and depicting the historic Main Meeting House, was featured in Sotheby's auction in New York. This painting was actually executed en plein air during Hopper's summers in Cape Elizabeth. And you can see that it highlights these quiet, light passages and a focus on architecture, which is something that is characteristic of Hopper's plein air work. This painting ultimately sold for $1 million at auction, again underscoring the strong market for early American watercolors. At Christie's 20th Century Evening Sale in New York, a stunning gouache and watercolor on paper by John Singer Sargent, titled Gondolier's Siesta, painted in 1903 and capturing a very peaceful Venetian scene with two gondoliers peacefully napping with luminous watercolor reflections or water reflections, drew attention from everyone because, again, it got sold at quite a high price as well. I love this piece. It really exemplifies Sargent's mastery of light, water, and brushwork that was developed during his frequent visits to Italy. Again, it's a beautiful reminder of how watercolor and watercolor related media continue to command serious appreciation and major market interest more than a century after their creation. Moving on to exhibits that you cannot miss. Discover how Winslow Homer's watercolors, once considered merely just a study media, revolutionized American art by harnessing our medium's transparency, immediacy, and its power to capture light and motion with just a few brushstrokes. This exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston reunites dozens of these works and showcases why these pieces helped elevate watercolor from kind of a secondary sketch study tool to a force in fine art history. The St. Louis Watercolor Society has shared an invitation from William Curtis, spotlighting acclaimed St. Louis based artist William Bill Curtis and his ongoing contributions to the watercolor community. Curtis is known for his watercolors of classic cars, with decades of exhibitions and awards from regional groups and juried shows. And finally, celebrating 25 years with Gurati Collections, Rome-based watercolorist Wendy Arton presents Cornucopia 25. This is a lush and beautiful suite of 50 watercolors featuring ripe fruit, delicate flowers, and classical statuary as well. Wendy Arton is one of my favorite watercolorists. I really admire her command of the human form and of shadow and light, and this Boston show at Gurati Collections is a testament to their lifelong devotion to watercolor. That's this week's Watercolor Science News. If you saw a new paint, pigment change, a new study, an interesting blog post, or an exhibition that caught your eye, drop it in the comments or shoot me an email. Definitely consider liking and subscribing so you don't miss the next update. And as always, thank you for joining me here at Watercolor Scientist, where we ask weird questions, we test our hypotheses, and we share our results with the world.